Good afternoon, students, and welcome to this session presented by Student Counseling Development on healthy relationships. I would like to also thank our colleagues from Student Counseling for taking this time to address us this afternoon. So before we start, I just want to go through some Zoom webinar protocol with you students so that we have a great session without any interruptions. So first of all, in the participants panel, you will see that you are able to rename yourself. For example, I saw there's a student who logged on and their name in the participants panel was just iPhone. So then you can just hover over your name, click on more and say rename, and then you can rename yourself. Then also in the participants panel, there's also a raise your hand button. So then that is where you indicate that you maybe have a question, you want the time to speak. So if the presenters asks a question, you are more than welcome to raise your hand if you want to respond. You can also use the chat panel to post a comment or a question that you have. In the chat panel, you can also, if you have any technical difficulties, start your message just with @tech at the beginning, so that I know that you need some technical assistance. Please note that this session is recorded, and then also please, for attendance register purposes, write your name, surname, and student number in the chat. That is then all from me. I'm now handing over to our colleagues from Student Counseling and Development to present for us. Thank you.
Good afternoon, students. This is a wonderful opportunity that we have been given to be part of this presentation. I'm really excited for the session. My name is Penelope Mutweni, and I'm going to quickly share my screen with you guys. I'm going to share my screen with you guys so that you see what it is that we're going through. I hope that you guys are looking forward to this. I would like that you guys participate, that you take part in the presentation, that you ask questions where you feel that you need to be clarified. There are two other colleagues that are part of this session as well, and they are going to assist us through the presentation. So let's see. Okay, are you guys seeing my screen?
Yes, we are. Thank you. You can just maybe put it in presenter mode.
Okay.
To your right. Yes, thank you.
Is that it?
Perfect.
Okay. So yes, as I've told you, my name is Penelope Mutweni. I'm a social worker, and I'm from the Student Counseling and Development under the Disability Rights Unit at the NWU. I've got a colleague of mine, Onelihle Makadema. She is a student counselor, and she is from the Mafikeng campus at the Student Counseling and Development. And I've also got Pietro Bashov. She's also a social worker. She is at the Student Counseling and Development at the Tuso Crisis Center, also based in the Potchefstroom campus. We are obviously talking about relationships or relationship well-being today, and we put together some information that can help you understand what it is that we're referring to, as well as just a few tips here and there. We obviously, I think every one of us hopes we constantly are hoping for great relationships, for healthy ones, and we're really just looking into all those little basics that can help us become amazing people in relationships, that can help us contribute positively to the relationships that we choose and that we have. So part of the content that we've put together, we are defining some important terminology for you guys. we're stating or giving an indication of the types of relationships that we have. We're talking a little bit on a theory that refers to relationships, and that's the Stainsburg triangular theory and the 7 types of love. We're going to just briefly touch on that. We're talking about why relationships are important. We obviously need to have a good understanding of why it is important for us to be in relationships. We're talking about some traits of healthy relationships. So some traits that can help us spot healthy, great relationships, some traits that can help us spot unhealthy or negative relationships that we need to possibly run away from. We're talking about pedestaling. That is a big thing. I think it's something that happens quite often in relationships, and we're going to address a bit of that. We're going to speak about how we can contribute to the well-being of others and our own well-being while we are in relationships. We're going to speak of the benefits of healthy relationships, some important things to think about for yourself, and certain certain people that are around you. What do you need to think of when you're thinking of relationships or when you're thinking of going into relationships? And last but not least, we're going to have a session, a short session on questions that you may have so that we can come up with some answers. Please stop me if I'm too fast or if I'm missing something, or if you're missing something on your side and you would like to be clarified. Thank you very much. So the first slide that speaks of important terminology. We're defining relationship, we're defining well-being, we're defining quality of life and intimacy. And how we came about to decide that we want to define these 4 terms was because when we think of relationships, we cannot think of a relationship and not think about how it affects our quality of life. We cannot think of a relationship and not think of how it affects our well-being, or we cannot think of a relationship and not necessarily think about intimacy. So all these terms are basically kind of tied together in a certain way, and that's how we got to decide that we want to define these 4 terms. So we can define a relationship and say it is a particular type of connection between people. For example, between family or friends, it is a connection where people have the ability to influence each other's emotions and behavior and a way of thinking. We could define well-being as an experience of health, happiness, and prosperity. It includes good mental health, high life satisfaction, a sense of meaning and purpose, and ability to manage stress. Or generally, we could just say that it is a feeling of just feeling, it's a feeling of being well. That is how we could define well-being. We define quality of life as the standard by which one measures your overall well-being, satisfaction, and happiness in life. There are factors that play a role. Factors that play a role is also according to individual preference. So somebody else might say, because I'm able to exercise, I consider my quality of life really high up there and great. And somebody else might say, I like the fact that I'm able to travel is an indication that my quality of life is high up there and it is great. So there's quite a number of preferences from different people based really on what it is that they prefer. Intimacy can be defined as an intimate relationship and an interpersonal relationship that involves physical, emotional intimacy. I think that in our social spaces, in the relationships that we have, we would have previously normally understood intimacy as a sexual relationship, but it actually is a relationship that goes beyond a sexual relationship because it involves family and friends or acquaintances. You could measure a level of intimacy between friends, or you could measure a level of intimacy between family members. So it is not really just limited to a sexual relationship. And if we look at types of relationships that we want to talk about or refer to, or the kind of relationships that we that kind of affect us, we thought about 3 relationships, and that is a relationship with family, a relationship with friends, or a romantic relationship between romantic partners. Steinbeck triangular theory and the 7 types of love. In this particular slide, we want to speak more about intimacy, which includes feelings of closeness and being connected. And this is basically another highlight that intimacy does not necessarily mean a sexual connection. It really goes beyond what we basically would have previously understood as. So it is feelings of closeness and being connected to some people, and how you could say that 2 friends are highly intimate because they are really close, they are really connected to each other. And you could say, this couple, you can barely sense any intimacy between these 2 couples, because perhaps when you look at them or when they speak, there isn't a feeling, or you don't necessarily get a feeling of connection between the 2 people. So that would probably give you a measure that their intimacy level is low up there. And intimacy is obviously influenced by being able to trust somebody, knowing that you can rely on the other person, knowing that the person has, you trust that the person has good thoughts for you. They basically are looking at to contribute to your life positively. So intimacy will come from such contributions from one's life. And then we look at passion. Passion includes feelings and desires that lead to physical attraction, romance, and sexual consummation. We look at decision or commitment. It includes feelings that lead a person to choose to be with someone and thrive towards a shared goal. These are the different, we're now referring to the different types of love in this slide. The first type of love that is given to us as infatuation. So this is normally passion, and it includes being physically attracted to somebody, wanting to be able to touch and feel, and wanting to probably get into a sexual relationship with them. Intimacy is also clarified as really liking somebody. You realize that you like this person, you trust this person, you're connected to this person in some way. And then there's empty love, which is referred to as commitment. There's fatuous love, which is commitment plus passion. So this is somebody that wants to say, I want to stay with this person, and also I want to stay with this person because there's this great attraction between myself and this person. And then there is romantic love that includes passion and intimacy, which means which may be seen as I am highly attracted to this person, perhaps with the passion and intimacy. I trust this person. I want to be with this person. I feel connected to this person. That is the romantic love. This compassionate love, which indicates intimacy and commitment, and perhaps we share a lot of compassionate love amongst our friends and maybe family members. So it refers to some level of closeness to the person, some level of connection towards the person, and then also refers to the term of, or the notion of, empty love. And then there's consummate love, which includes passion, intimacy, and commitment. So this basically includes all the three main or major types of love. It includes the passion, you're highly attracted to the person, sexually you are highly connected to the person, intimately, and you're making the commitment, the choosing to stay with this person that you may want to be with. And that is basically the seven types of love that Steinberg gives us an example of. Why are relationships important? Erik Erikson is the one that also gives us a clear indication of why relationships are important and why relationships are formed. Erik Erikson also gives us an indication of the different types of developmental, psychosocial developmental stages that gives us an indication of why we develop the way that we do, why we prefer certain relationships over others, how when we were a child, or when we were, say for instance, between the ages of 15 and 13 years, how our lives at that particular time will influence our lives at this point in time. Between the ages of 21 to 39, which is normally by the time that you would be from 21 years, you would either be entering university or leaving university. That is normally the time that we want some intimacy, you know. And if we had been able to embrace relationships from an early age and have a great understanding of what relationships mean, we are most likely to, at this age of perhaps 20, 21, we're most likely to then desire to have intimate relationships. You know, there's a big perhaps fight between wanting to either be intimate or wanting to isolate ourselves from relationships. An additional point that Erikson, or that the theory from Erikson actually highlights for us, is that during adulthood, the major conflict focus on forming intimate relationships with other people. And normally that is where we are when we are in university. We are really looking forward to forming intimate relationships with people. We're forming loving relationships with other people, be it our friends or people that we connect with on a romantic level. Perhaps another point that is important is that when we are able to build relationships with our parents when we are young, when we are babies, when we are infants, and we're able to maintain great relationships as children, when we then become young adults, it kind of becomes quite easier to establish successful and fulfilling relationships. And on the other hand, in an instance where perhaps we could have had difficult relationships with our family members when we were little, it may affect the way that we have relationships later in our lives. So part of what happens in our childhood based on relationships could be the thing that actually also influences how the relationships that we go into today become or fail or become unsuccessful. That's why perhaps we will spend a lot of time trying to go back to understanding how the relationships that we had with the people that raised us, or with the people that we could have encountered when we were younger, how they actually influence our current space and the current relationships that we have. That is basically Erik Erikson and the theory there. I'm going to just give over to one of my colleagues that is going to speak of the next slide that says, why are relationships important? Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Yes, like Penny highlighted, relationships are important because it attends to our needs. And before we can enter into relationships with family, friends, or even romantic relationships, it's important that we remember you need to love yourself. You need to be okay with yourself before you can commit to healthy relationships, regardless if it's family or friends or romantic. So why is relationships important? Because you get to share a part of yourself, and in turn it gives you a strong sense of belonging. And while sharing a part of yourself, you need to to remain, to keep a strong sense of self identity, who you are. You shouldn't lose your identity in healthy relationships, and you are able to commit to other people. And the kickback is if you can see that everyone else is putting the same amount of effort into that relationships, that you are also putting into that relationships, then that's that feeling of belonging and care. Which brings me to the next point, which says that you are able to be intimate with other people. And like Penny said, it's not just about physical intimacy, it's also about emotional intimacy and that near closeness where you are able to share healthy communication skills, and there's a commitment and there's compromises in that relationship. And you also care, or get the opportunity to care about the needs of others, and that's comforting, and it provides comfort and support. And getting love is important, but also giving it. It's almost like that two-way street: giving a little bit, getting a little bit, giving a little bit, and getting a little bit. So if we go to the next slide, we shall see that theory, like Penny suggested previously, theory and the evolutionary approaches and attachment theory suggest that we have a basic need for that social connection. And that is why relationships and investing in healthy relationships are so important. And it also helps you to cope with stress. Relationship makes you feel good about yourself. And in turn, you get to be stronger and able to cope with your stressors. And you get that fundamental feeling where you belong. And that is when you're most likely to thrive in relationships, when you feel connected to your significant others. It's almost that relationships enables you to be the best that you want to be. And in order for you to also do that and achieve that, you need to take account or ownership for the impact of your words and actions and your behaviors. And you need to clarify misunderstandings, even if it was not your intention in that regard. So, if we continue to the next slide, why are relationships important? It's also to feel connected to significant others. It experience, or it almost validate your feeling of the self, leading to feelings of warmth, acceptance, belonging, and trust. And that should add to an increase in your emotional and physical well-being. It's enjoyable. You like it. You want to be there in that relationship. But then, on the other hand, a warning sign, a lack of above mentioned, these feelings of validation of the self, leading of feelings of warmth, a lack of that um, leads to a decrease of physical and emotional well-being, when symptoms and treatments can cause harm to a person's self-image and self-esteem. And it's important because then we need to identify these warning signs. And later on, Oni is going to talk about those warning signs of unhealthy relationships. In the next slide, we look at some traits of healthy relationships. And the first little guy there in the left corner says, healthy relationships, some of the traits will be that both people in that relationship are able to be authentic without any fear of judgment. You can be honest, and you shouldn't hide things in relationships, because then it's not a healthy relationship anymore. You need to feel that you can be open and honest in your communication. And the second bullet there is it gives you a greater sense of purpose. So a relationship and a healthy relationship brings out the best of each other in that relationship. If you can feel that this relationship is making me happy, then you know you feel easy. It's a good relationship. It's a healthy relationship. Both people trust and respect each other and share in honesty. One should not be able to put to a test in order to prove your loyalty in a relationship. If there's that expectation in a relationship that you need to prove your loyalty by doing something that you feel uncomfortable with, then it's not a healthy relationship anymore. Then the second from the bottom, both people feel protected and they value the relationship and they make it a priority. Like I said earlier, it's when you can feel that everybody is putting the same amount of effort into this relationship. It feels healthy. It feels that it's a two-way street. I I I give a little bit about myself and I tend to get something back from you in return, and in the sense of emotional gratification in that regard. Then both people listen to each other and compromise when necessary. There's almost that equality in the relationship, because the minute when you feel belittled, um, or feel that you are not taken care of emotionally in this relationship, then it's not healthy for you anymore. Okay, and then the next slide just highlights the fact that if we can go to the next one, some more traits of healthy relationships is both people are responsible for their own needs, as well as the needs that emanate from the relationship. So one should feel that you are you are not being judged, and that you are taken care of, and that you are comforted, and that you are feeling okay. Then you know it's a healthy relationship. Both people should be able to speak freely and communicate their thoughts and feelings effectively. Because if you cannot do that, if you cannot be honest and open in your communication, then it means that there's something wrong. Both people are able to set boundaries for the relationship, and both of the people that set those boundaries to say these are the limits within this relationship, whether it's a friend or a romantic relationship, if you cannot respect those boundaries, it means that both of you are not on the same page in terms of that. Arguments and disagreements do not lead to threats or violence. And it's important to remember that conflict is okay. Conflict is part of relationships, and conflict does not necessarily mean it's bad. It's good, because there will always be disagreements. But if it leads to threats of violence, then there's the warning light. There's no physical, verbal, or emotional abuse in this relationship, and it's that feeling of I'm safe. I can say, I can do, I've got the boundaries, I'm okay with whom I am, and I'm being the best of who I can be in this relationship. Then it's a healthy relationship. But Anne, if you can take over from here and highlight the unhealthy traits, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. I'll be covering what are some traits of unhealthy relationships. Unhealthy traits of relationships, or rather unhealthy traits in a relationship, can be seen when the focus of the relationship is more about me than us. It's more about a particular individual and not both or more or all the parties that are involved in that relationship. Can be seen when there's an element of superiority and control by one individual, where they may sometimes use pressure to get what they want. Pressure can be blackmailing, pressure can be, threats. Yeah. When also there's a lack of taking responsibility and constant blame shifting, either on current or past mistakes. So instead of addressing the problem that is at hand, people are always trying to find out whose fault it is, and sometimes dragging the past just to make a point that they are the ones who are right in this argument or in this discussion. Also, another trait is losing your sense of self as a result of trying to please the other person in a demeaning manner. It can also be being in a relationship but feeling alone due to a lack of support and understanding. You know that you're maybe a friend with someone, or you're dating, or you have a sister, but you somehow feel a sense of disconnection because you're not receiving the support and the care and the love that you would like to receive in that kind of relationship. Another trait is when there's a presence of disrespect, constant disrespect and humiliation, where you are made to feel small and not treated as an equal. And the last one could be maybe any form of abuse in the relationship, be it physical, verbal, emotional, or in any other way. And yes, sorry, that was not the last point. This is the last point. The last point is pedestaling. It's a concept that is not really, that many people are not familiar with. However, a similar concept that you're familiar with is idolizing. This is idolizing in a relationship. So now I'll give the definition of pedestaling, and then I'll give the reasons why it should not be done in a relationship. Pedestaling is when one individual puts his or her an individual puts her partner or friends on a psychological pedestal above themselves in any way. So this then is maybe when a person feels that their friend or their family member or their partner is perfect in every way. And that then in turn makes the person feel that they are inferior to the partner. The reasons why pedestaling is not, or rather should not be done in a relationship is because it's important for a person to remember that whoever they're in a relationship with is human and not a god. If you put someone at a high pedestal, you run the risk of that person not being able to maintain your idea of perfection. You also run a risk of unintentionally stunting their growth, because if you see a person as perfect, it means there's no room for that person to improve on any personal flaws that they may have, or any other flaws that they may need to improve on to make the relationship better. Also, you create an idea of the person that you think the actual person is, and you end up not getting to see the person for who they really are. Pedestaling can also provoke insecurities in the other person and also in yourself, because the person may either feel uncomfortable with the fact that you see them as this perfect being, or the insecurity in yourself could be you feel so inferior, and because you feel that you can never reach that person's state of perfection. And lastly, you may become very disappointed when you realize that that person is unable to live up to your standards of perfection, or to your expectations of them. Can we have the next slide, please? How do we establish healthy relationships that contribute to our well-being and that of others? We start by giving time. We start by giving time, or rather making time for each other. Being present and proactive in the relationship. Listening to the other person when they're communicating something, which will also mean you may also be given a chance to be listened to when you have something to address or talk about in the relationship. The other one is being able to recognize unhealthy relationships and come up with resolutions on how to resolve whatever issue may be at hand. It also helps you create healthy boundaries with the person. And lastly, but not least, you get an opportunity to actually learn what your love language is, and you also get to learn what the other person's love language is. And whatever you give, what love language you give, you also receive something. You also receive love in a way that will satisfy you and make you feel happy and content with being in the relationship. Benefits of healthy relationships. Relationship well-being contributes to mental health and our overall well-being. Relationship well-being contributes to our general quality of life. Relationships help individuals sustain a positive affective balance, which facilitate emotional regulation and also build resilience. Being in a committed relationship is linked to less production of cortisol, a stress hormone, so to better regulation of emotions and mood. It's a lot easier to take on healthy behaviors when you surround yourself with people who are also doing the same. Relationships should be a choice of wanting to be with someone, not just about needing the person or being with the person because you feel so. Can I have the next slide? Important things to think about for yourself, but also for others when you are thinking about being in a relationship or when you are reevaluating the kind of relationship that you're in. The first point would be, what is your personal definition of a relationship? It can be a romantic relationship, a friendship relationship, family relationship. Now, when you're thinking about that, when you think about the definition, and maybe you have a particular person in mind, ask yourself, what do you want? Ask yourself, why do you want a relationship with that particular person? Also, ask yourself, what do you want to gain from the relationship with that particular person? And also ask yourself and do an introspection on what do you have to give in the relationship, because remember, you cannot only want to gain from a relationship, you should also have something to give in the relationship to create a balance where each person will receive and give. And lastly, take time to think, what are the changes that you would like to see in a relationship? If maybe you're now taking time and reevaluating an existing relationship, ask yourself, in this relationship that I'm in with this person, what's lacking? What areas need a bit of improvement? And work on obviously finding the resolutions so that your relationship can be improved. And if ever maybe it happens that you would like to think about this question in the perception of, or in prospect, with regards to a prospective relationship, ask yourself, what needs to be different? What changes? What's different? What difference is it that you want to see in this new relationship in comparison to the one that you were previously in? And that then can help you establish what kind of habits, what kind of behaviors need to take place in order for the next relationship or the prospective relationship to work out better than the previous one.
Okay. We have come to the end of our presentation, and I will just would like to take this time to invite you guys in for some questions if you've got, so that we perhaps just come up with answers. Any questions that you would like to ask regarding the presentation? Any questions that you would like to ask regarding or based on relationships in general? This is the platform where you can basically do that. Thank you very much.